a blue light, so should it. So I think it's very revealing that these three people report that they've had this experience, and yet their own videotape doesn't verify it.
Flynn also says that several of Conover's claims that he feels a presence, can move spirits through the light, and is able to see ectoplasm, are based on mythology commonly used by those who believe in ghosts.
One of the stock tricks that spirit mediums would do at their seances, starting about in the 1860s, was to produce ectoplasm. We know now that 19th century mediums were using sleight of hand tricks, but out of this came the tradition that this ectoplasm, this kind of semi-material stuff, existed that pertained to the ghosts.
Believers say that Conover may be relying on terms from popular culture, but his ritual appeared to be effective. Since Conover's visit, the Browns are no longer plagued by mysterious noises and phantom footsteps.
The Ghostbuster that came into Tom and Linda's house may have had some genuine ability to affect the environment. This one Ghostbuster did something. What he did worked.
Professor Finook encounters that the best way to eliminate imaginary ghosts is by using imaginary ghost busting.
This is psychological relief more than anything else. In other words, he said the things these people wished to have said. He did the things which seemed to be appropriate to what they wanted to see and hear.
Was the apparition of Stuart Wall's ghost a shared vision or a shared illusion? Does the mind make the senses lie? Or do troubled spirits of the dead roam this earth? The answer depends on your belief in the supernatural. For some who say ghosts haunt their lives, relief comes when the spirit leaves or the victims depart. For others, no house can be a home. For these families, there is no respite and no escape. A painful divorce in 1968 left Beth alone with a small child and little money. She was rebuilding her life when she met Bob Batesel a few years later. They fell in love, got married, and Bob adopted Beth's daughter, Leah. In 1971, when the Batesels moved into this two-family house in New Brunswick, New Jersey, the young family's newfound happiness would be fleeting. Strange events began happening in the house. At first, Bob and Beth dismissed the odd activity. Lamps swinging, doors opening and closing, objects appearing in the wrong places. Then they were forced to confront the terror trapped in the walls of their new home. The pungent smell of rotting flowers wafted throughout the rooms. Temperatures supposedly rose to sweltering levels for no apparent reason. They began to witness shocking sights. Knives, forks, and baby bottles darted about the house, making them fear for their lives.
I felt very scared, unsafe, undermined. You didn't know what was coming next, and that's a very undermining feeling of never knowing that the ground or the rug is being pulled out from under you. So you didn't know what to expect, so you were always aware. So the stress level was very high.
The ghastly events escalated. The Batesels claimed they were attacked by small objects hurled about the house by unseen forces.
I had some friends over for lunch, and just out of nowhere, the bathtub stopper, a round bathtub stopper, just came flying between two of us that were seated at the table as though someone just threw it.
The moving objects became even more threatening. One night, Bob and Beth were paralyzed with fear as they watched a lit cigarette drift down from the ceiling.
We just didn't know what to do because we didn't know whether to reach out and grab it, if someone were actually holding it that we just didn't see. If it hit the floor, would it start a fire? We just didn't know what to do.
The enormous stress from incidents like this forced Beth, who had never believed in ghosts, to confront what seemed very much like a haunting. Word of the Batesels' ghost spread, and a spiritual group interested in paranormal activities asked to conduct a seance in their home. Bob and Beth, at a loss for an alternative, agreed.
We felt we were drowning in a sea of phenomena that we could not explain. We had never had this before, we didn't know anything about it at the time, and we needed help.
The group gathered with Beth and Bob around the dining room table. They closed their eyes and joined hands. When the psychic called out to the spirits, the ghost began to speak through her. Beth secretly taped the proceedings.
Can you tell us your name?
It's my land. And you get out.
Well, if we could investigate to see if it is your land, maybe we would get out, but you'll have to help us and tell us what your name is.
My name is George Baxter.
George Baxter?
This land belonged to me. I bought it in the year 1872. Now you look that up, mister.
We will, George.
The next day, Beth went to the New Brunswick Library to research the history of the house. She discovered a George Baxter had bought the land in 1872. Beth was stunned, but Bob remained skeptical until a few weeks later, when they found threats written in lipstick and marker on the walls and mirrors. Now Bob was certain that his house was haunted. The angry ghost became brazen, scribbling harrowing messages to the family. What you see here are the actual notes that Bob claims were written by the ghost. As the alleged hauntings escalated, the Batesels could no longer keep their 8-year-old daughter safe from the ghost.
I knew something was going on. You'd have to be an idiot not to know something was going on when on your 8th birthday you wake up in the morning and there are red crosses all over the walls and the words "Go Dead" written.
In 1972, Beth gave birth to their second daughter, Lisa. The threat to both children loomed larger. According to Leah Batesel, by that time the ghost had already done irreparable damage to her childhood.
It is a hell house. It's the house from hell. As far as I'm concerned, that house destroyed what prior to moving in there was a normal 4-year-old girl. I hate that house.
Beth grew to hate the house too. She knew her daughters were frightened, and she felt that she had no way to protect them.
When you touch my child, that's the line. And that's what happened. There were a number of incidents, a couple in particular, that were very, very focused on our children, and we felt that that was it and we had to leave.
Unwilling to do battle with their ghost any longer, the Batesels packed up all their belongings and moved, certain they were leaving the violent spirit behind. Their desperate attempt to escape only took them deeper into the mystery. Bob and Beth Batesel and their 2 young daughters fled their home in New Brunswick, New Jersey, believing they were escaping the terror of the ghost that haunted them there. For 4 years, the Batesels lived in this house, where they were harassed almost daily by ghostly threats. Now they were searching for a more peaceful abode. The Batesels moved to an apartment in Clinton, New Jersey. The persistent ghost followed, and only became more hostile. The Batesels claimed that an unseen force shoved Beth, Bob, and Leah down the stairs. They moved again. This time they moved further away, to Flemington, New Jersey. They had barely finished unpacking when one morning, to Beth's horror, she found a butcher knife impaled in the kitchen door frame. She knew then they had not eluded the vicious spirit.
Once again, we moved into a new place, hoping that the phenomena was over and it would have stayed far behind us, and we could just pick up where we always were, trying to be a normal family.
From 1971 to 1985, Bob and Beth moved 11 times, and their lives were anything but normal.
We lost friends because we couldn't explain anything, and everybody was looking for an explanation. Everybody would blame us. It's happening to you, therefore, it's your fault.
With no one to turn to, they united to battle their demons. They built their last house from the ground up in Lake Ariel, Pennsylvania, hoping the fresh start would finally eradicate the ghost. It didn't. The first weekend after moving into the Lake Ariel home, a ghost left the Batesels a most horrifying welcome. It was well past midnight when the Batesels were startled out of bed by hysterical crying. Rushing to their daughter's room, the Batesels found her terrified, screaming that her cat was hanging by its neck from the doorway with its eyes gouged out. The Batesels saw nothing. This ghost-like apparition had disappeared. Several nights later, the Batesels were again startled out of their sleep as the glass in picture frames hung in the living room spontaneously exploded, shattering glass throughout the house.
It's really difficult to describe how you feel when you're in the middle of a whirlwind. But we have stopped asking why because we're too busy dealing and living with it.
Most reports of hauntings link the ghost to a place. The Batesels believe that in their case, ghosts come to them.
We have come to understand that there are hauntings which are attached to a particular place and remain. And then there are hauntings that seem to be the people. The people are haunted, not the place. So no matter where the people go, it doesn't matter, they will still be haunted. From everything that has been done and tested and what we've been told, I seem to have some kind of presence. I am some kind of magnet that seems to attract these spiritual things.
The Batesels, physically and emotionally exhausted, say they can no longer try to escape the ghost. They remain in their Lake Ariel home, resigned to its hauntings and uneasy about what may lie ahead. Do the Batesels somehow attract hauntings and spirits wherever they live? Or do they create their own demons? For scientists like Nobel Prize-winning physicist Leon Lederman, the answer is simple.
I would just flat out say, you don't have haunted houses. You have either some gullible people or some dishonest people who are making this all up. Science has no room for ghosts.
Psychologist Carl Schlotterbeck has found room for ghosts. He investigated the Batesel stories, came to support the family's claims, and joined Beth Batesel in co-authoring a book about her experiences.
I became a believer fairly quickly. You could walk through the house and feel in different rooms. In one room it was difficult to breathe even. And recordings made in that room were fainter than they were in the rest of the house. In other places you could feel things in the air.
Schlotterbeck believes the Batesels found ghosts at each of their households because the entities were attracted to certain inviting qualities in Beth Batesel.
One investigator referred to her as an undeveloped psychic, perhaps. Other people have just referred to her as a magnet, that her warmth and her caring about people actually extends into the other world, and that lost souls who haven't crossed on find her a warm and comforting presence to be around.
Lederman points out that none of this is scientifically verifiable. The scientific method demands much more than impressions and feelings to validate a claim.
To claim that I see this, I have to prove it. The burden is on the owner of that site or the writer of the book And in 400 years of innumerable claims, no one has ever succeeded in convincing the scientific community.
Parapsychologist Lloyd Auerbach finds proof in